Hi, my name is Ann Whitbeck. This is my presentation for Marriage and Family Therapy Techniques, PSY 512. The title is All We Need Is Love and Good Boundaries, an in-depth look at structural family therapy. I'm sorry for the bootleg setup, but my Kaltura is not working. So the creators of structural family therapy, the type of therapy I will be focusing on, is the main creator is Salvador Minuchin. He was born in 1921, died in 2017. He's from Argentina, trained extensively with delinquent boys and their families, and then he went on to develop structural family therapy in the 1960s with colleagues at the Philadelphia Child Guidance Clinic, which was affiliated with Philadelphia Children's Hospital and University of Pennsylvania. He believed in addressing problems solely from the lens of the individual was pointless. He really felt that understanding the entire family structure was necessary in order to fully understand the issues. So the main principles of structural family therapy are, number one, Minuchin believed that the problem was, like I just said, within the family and not just with the individual. So you really have to start understanding the homeostasis of the whole system. And if you change the structure of the family, you change the experience of each family member, because then their role has to adjust to the new structure. Change does not happen suddenly, but rather a gradual shift occurs over time to create meaningful impact. Children's problems are most often related to their parents' relationship and the boundaries at play between the parents. Some of the key concepts are, number one, as I just mentioned, boundaries. So boundaries are a fundamental concept in structural family therapy. They indicate the dynamics between family members, they regulate the amount and the nature of the contact. So I like to describe it as like the entire family is sitting down to dinner, everybody has their plate, and that plate represents their boundaries, and everything on that plate is, let's say, their values, their priorities, maybe even like their personality style, and it's their job to protect their plate or to, let their plate, so to speak, be known, let their boundaries be known. And there are different types of boundaries within a family, and those are described as one, rigid, so there's no emotional connection in rigid boundaries. Two, clear, so there's a clear sense of where one person ends, another one begins. The plate analysis would work here. Diffuse, there's lots of shared decision-making, not enough structure between people. This would be like everybody sharing off of each other's plate. There's no clear individual, it's diffuse. And then disengaged, very distant, uninvolved, cold, little connection, not an emotionally close or interactive family at all. Next key concept is hierarchy. What are the unwritten family rules and roles surrounding all family members? What and who is dictating what is important in the family? And Minuchin believed that hierarchy is actually necessary in the family to avoid chaos. Of course, too much hierarchy, would indicate a very rigid, closed system, but it is needed in some degree to keep the family from spinning into chaos. So another key concept is subsystems. So these are the unseen connections between family members that inform interactions, and they're a smaller, distinct unit. So they are the parents. We would hope that they would have a subsystem. They'd be on the same page, same values, principles, rules, and this creates a very clear system for the kids when the parents have a clear subsystem. The siblings often have a subsystem, females sometimes, or the males in the family. And then there is sometimes a multi-generational subsystem, like For example, the mom and the son are extremely close. Sometimes that can create an imbalanced system. And so that would take us to a coalition, another key concept. A coalition is a connection made between family members, possibly of different generations, as I just mentioned. The specific alignment within the family where two members team up against one another. That's very common where, like we saw in one of our past vignettes, the father and daughter were really on the same page and teaming up against the mom, saying she's always grumpy, she's so rigid, and this creates a real instability because the hierarchy of the parents is imbalanced. The hierarchy and connection between, or not necessarily hierarchy, but just the connection between the different facets of the family get imbalanced when coalitions become too strong. These two are very cute, though. They have a good coalition. We are going to say they do. Next up is the role of the therapist. So the role of the therapist in structural family therapy is to disrupt the system. If it's too closed, we want to create a little more interaction, a little more connection. If it's too chaotic, we want to create more clear boundaries, more clear of a hierarchy perhaps, or it could be diffused. The boundaries are diffused. There's not enough boundaries, or they're enmeshed. No clear individuals have their say, or there's too much hovering, those sorts of things. The therapist always also wants to aid in restructuring of the system. So you could rearrange the subsystems, as we mentioned earlier. If there's a parent and a child, you can restructure those systems so that it's more clear and more balanced. Rearrange coalitions if it's not healthy, and again, creating imbalance. In structural family therapy, there's also the directive, where the therapist is kind of the choreographer and asks the clients, okay, can you show me what it's like when you guys get in a fight about, if the kids can have ice cream tonight, and who says what? And then they might say, okay, well, why don't you practice saying yes one night, but let's make a schedule, or just things like this. The therapist suggests different ways to enact the scenario. And this is called, gave it away, enactment. So a closer look at enactments. As I just said, therapist identifies issues by observing interactions. So they have the clients interact as they would, and the therapist is not an actor within the situation, but rather a director, asking clients to perform or engage in certain ways that are new to them, and so they might possibly see the situation from a different angle if they hadn't seen it from that perspective before, or if they haven't played that role before. They're like, oh, wait, okay, well, that makes sense. It might open up some new doorways, turn on some light bulbs, and it illustrates issues in a different way so clients can get a different perspective. So lastly, here's my summarization of structural theory. So we have hierarchy, established ranking in the family, boundaries, the level of distinction between family members and the nature of their contact, coalitions, two members teaming up, and subsystems, a smaller unit within the family. These are my references. Thank you very much. Have a good night.